Why don't we get, we're going to get started now. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our community information session on the temporary supportive housing that's going to be coming in on the 3rd Avenue of Prince George. My name is Jennifer, and I'm going to be facilitating for tonight. I'd like to start tonight by beginning with a land acknowledgement and acknowledging that we are with gratitude on the area that we're discussing today, situated on the unceded traditional territory of the Lheidli T'enneh. It is now with my most pleasure to introduce Helen Bouzaz, an elder from the Lheidli T'enneh, for her words of welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening, everybody. I would like to welcome everyone who is joining this very important event. On behalf of the Lheidli T'enneh members, welcome to the traditional territory of the Lheidli T'enneh. Lheidli has over 800 members. We live, work, and play on our unceded territory for over 9,000 years. Please accept this welcome and to remind everyone to love each other, take good care of each other, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Thanks very much. All right, we'll get started with a few introductions. I'd like to begin by introducing a few of our speakers and individuals with BC Housing. The first is Kirsten Baillie, the Senior Manager of Development. We have Ruby Chow, who is the Development Manager, and Andressa Thompson, the Nonprofit Portfolio Manager with BC Housing. From the City of Prince George, we have Deanna Wasnik, Director of Planning and Development, and Holahan, the Supervisor of Land Use Planning and Development. Thank you for joining us. I want to just thank you again for reaching out about the Prince George Community Information Session this evening, and we really appreciate your interest in participating. Due to the demand, we recently increased our capacity for this information session from 30 to 50, and this has since filled up as well. So we recognize that there are probably many more community members who would like to join in an information session about this project. So in our experience, increasing the capacity further than the 50, we believe would decrease the quality of the session and limit the participants' ability to have their questions answered. So we are working on setting up another additional session on the 397 3rd Avenue project. And once the session is arranged, we will post the details on the Let's Talk webpage. We'll also reach out to everyone directly that has expressed interest, letting them know that an additional session will be held. So thank you again for your interest, and we'll get started. So just a few guidelines to cover for our time together this evening. We commit to coming together in the spirit of community and sharing the information about this project and your questions openly and transparently. We want to balance the time for sharing information with answering questions and other parts of this evening. So just being cognizant of the time that we have together. We ask that all participants use respectful people-first language. And this sounds like people experiencing homelessness or people struggling with addiction, putting the person first. We ask for brief, genuine questions as to the point as possible. That will allow all of us to have more space for additional questions. And just keep in mind and be considerate that there may be people experiencing homelessness present tonight. A few additional details. All the participants that that are taking part tonight will be muted or unmuted by me. The chat messages will only appear to me, so feel free to use them if you wish. We will end the presentation with a Q&A, a question and answer period. And if you have questions at that time, you can type them into the Zoom Q&A space that should be, I believe, at the bottom of your screen. The presentation part of this session is being recorded, but the Q&A part will not be recorded. We'll just get back onto the correct slide of technical support. Perfect, great. So this slide is just to provide you with information for to gather additional information. The contacts are here for the email, as well as the number that you can call if you have any problems connecting or something that's not going quite right for you with our meeting host tonight. And then you can connect by phone with using the Zoom audio at 1-780-666-0144, and the meeting ID number is there as well. Okay, so for the topics that we're going to be covering in the next hour and a bit, we're going to be talking about homelessness and housing in Prince George. We are going to be discussing specifically the project, the temporary supportive housing on 3rd Avenue. We're going to talk a bit about what is supportive housing and what does that look like. And then we'll make time for a question and answer period at the end. So now I'm going to ask if Kirsten could kick us off with covering the homelessness in Prince George, please.
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer. So I'd like to speak a little bit about homelessness in Prince George. Each year, a homeless count is conducted. In Prince George, there were about 163 people identified as experiencing homelessness in Prince George. I always caution this number because it is a point in time, so it's at that moment in time, and there's often so many more additional people than what get counted on that at that time. Of the 163 people that were identified, 10 respondents were over the age of 60. 91% of those respondents reported being from Prince George for more than a year, and 26% reported as always having lived in Prince George. As I indicated, this number is not representational of everybody. There is often people sort of hidden homeless in terms of couch surfing and things like that. One fact I always find a bit interesting is about 57% of the respondents identified as being male and 40% identified as being female. So quite a fairly even distribution between men and women experiencing homelessness in Prince George. Next slide, please. Now, while today we're talking about homelessness and housing to address homelessness, I think it is so important for us all to understand homelessness is at one end of our ecosystem. In this case, we're talking about the very low income. So that's the very left of your screen. We're talking about housing to address homelessness here. But in no way does BC Housing or all of us not recognize the need for a variety of housing options and housing choices right along this whole spectrum. So BC Housing works to provide social housing or subsidized housing. In addition, through our various funding programs, we work to provide rental assistance and additional rental housing that really serves a broad spectrum of people, from middle income to seniors to a whole spectrum. In addition, BC Housing works to provide affordable rental and some affordable home ownership. So that need for a fulsome housing spectrum is really what all of our communities need right across British Columbia. And BC Housing does work to address those. Today, we're going to talk about 397 3rd Avenue, which is really to the very left of our screen, but in no way does it constitute the only type of housing we provide. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this is just a few examples of some projects we've done in Prince George. Quebec Street, we provide 36 units of affordable rental housing. Amber House is 17 units. This is a specialized program which is targeting women and children. In addition, we provided 35 units of supportive housing through our Aboriginal village. And projects that we are working on is the North Star Inn. You've probably heard about it. That's where we're looking at providing 96 units of supportive housing, in addition to 1919 17th Avenue, where it's 57 units of affordable rental housing. And I think the importance here is the depth and breadth of housing choices, housing options, and rental options to meet people at various stages of their housing needs. Next slide. So today we're talking about 397 3rd Avenue in Prince George. You're likely familiar with this area. It's a city-owned site right down on 3rd Avenue and London Street, and Lower Patricia Boulevard sort of forms that southern boundary to the bottom. Next slide. So why this site was selected is really because the province with BC Housing is working in partnership with the City of Prince George. We've signed a memorandum of understanding which commits us to working together to address people who are unhoused. This approach has been used because homelessness is such a complex, nuanced issue that we're really finding that we need all our partners to come together to work together on this topic. The city identified 397 3rd Avenue as a site for this project. It's important to note that our memorandum of understanding did indicate it needed to be city-owned land, so that really narrows our options. The city will be leasing the site to BC Housing for a nominal fee, and the city is providing the site servicing. So the city is coming forward as a great partner with us on this project, and we're so appreciative of that. BC Housing will provide the capital, so the funds to construct the temporary housing, in addition to the ongoing operating funding. And this is provided under the province's new HEARTH program. It's a program that aims to address the complexities associated with our unhoused population. Next slide, please. So what will this look like? It is temporary supportive housing. So the site will provide up to 43 temporary supportive housing. And that means that there'll be a room and a shared bathroom and amenity space for the residents. In addition, support services will be provided on site to help residents take the next step towards their successful housing journey. And most importantly, this provides an opportunity for more safe homes for people experiencing homelessness in Prince George. It provides a stable environment for them. They have their own room, the place to store their belongings, and have meals provided. And that safety and security is the key feature that we're looking for when providing this housing. Next slide. And in terms of timeline, so in January, it was announced the project plans for this site. We're unrolling sort of our community engagement and information sessions now. This is one of them. And that is where we try and get people understanding why we're doing this and what we're hoping to achieve with this temporary housing. In the summer, perhaps late spring, we'll be able to start some site work. And then it is an ATCO trailer model, so that can actually be installed very quickly on site once the initial site works connecting to all your site servicing is completed. And then we hope to have this completed by fall 2024 with the objective of providing housing through, obviously, prior to those winter months. So that's our sort of timing that we're looking at now. I'd like to turn it over to Deanna from the City of Prince George to speak a little bit about the process that the city goes through.
I'm actually going to jump in real quick and speak to this slide. So the City of Prince George will be considering a temporary use permit to allow temporary supportive housing on the project site. So a temporary use permit is a tool that allows local governments the ability to consider the temporary use of land for a use that is not permitted by the zoning bylaw. A temporary use permit may be issued for a period of up to 3 years, with the opportunity to renew the permit once for an additional 3 years, subject to council approval. Through the temporary use permit process, the City of Prince George will mail or otherwise deliver public notice to property owners and tenants within 30 meters of the project site. I'll pass that over to the next slide.
Okay, I'll take it from here. So pathways to homelessness are as varied and complex as the people experiencing homelessness. They could be anything from job loss to a traumatic event to health and mental health challenges. Next slide, please. Okay, so housing first. Why supportive housing is important. Supportive housing follows an evidence-based and internationally demonstrated housing first model by first providing stable housing and then working with a resident to promote recovery and well-being. People that are living on the streets in shelters and that are precariously housed will not have, without access to basic needs, they don't have the capacity to deal with anything beyond basic survival, which may result in dependence to drugs and alcohol and additional mental health challenges. So an opportunity to move people experiencing homelessness into independent and permanent housing gives them a bed to sleep in, a door to close and some privacy, their own washroom, they have breakfast every morning and one hot meal, and provide stability, and their basic necessities are met. So these additional wraparound supports that ensures a successful tenancy. Next slide, please. Okay, so supportive housing is a very, very affordable homes. The residents will be expected to pay rent at current income assistance shelter rates. Preference will be given to residents of Prince George and members of the encampment, and will provide culturally informed support services and individual case planning. Next slide. So services that are typically available provides meals, they have individual units and privacy, referrals to healthcare, mental health supports, substance abuse and recovery services, connection to local community services, educational and employment opportunities, 24/7 access to staff and support services, as well as life skill enhancement such as cooking and home maintenance. Next slide, please. So as far as who lives in supportive housing, basic criteria is that adults must be over the age of 19. We don't discriminate against gender or gender orientation. We include seniors and people with disabilities and anybody that is experiencing or at risk of homelessness, and that they need those additional supports to maintain their housing. All of the residents will be paying rent and expected to sign a program agreement around their expectations and behaviors. And the tenanting process is actually done through a process called coordinated access and assessment, where multiple agencies will come together and use a collaborative approach as part of the tenant selection process. This ensures a balanced residence mix. Next slide, please. So as far as community and resident safety, we know that there are concerns about supportive housing developments that are in areas that are typically not zoned for residences. We do have a who to call, when to call info sheet that'll be distributed to the neighborhood to keep those lines of communications open if there's any concerns, even any praise. And we do have other features that'll be implemented as part of the site to enhance community and resident safety, such as lighting, security cameras, and perimeter fencing. We'll do regular patrols around the property, and the program agreement signed by the residents will include expectations, again, about appropriate and respectful behavior, and that includes the neighbors. So there are some economic benefits of supportive housing, where supporting people where they are on the streets is significantly more costly in terms of healthcare and correction services. Once we start bringing them indoors, we'll see the need for first responder services drop. I'll let you guys take a moment to mull the slide over, but this is all based on empirical evidence. And then if we're ready to move on to the next slide.
Okay. Have we covered all your slides that you had anticipated? Yeah.
Yeah, we sure have.
Okay, great. Okay. So we're now at the point in the program where we're going to open up the Q&A function and have a look at some of the, see a couple of questions that have already come in. We're going to just remind you that if you don't, for some reason, get your question answered tonight, especially considering the number of people that are on this call, that you feel free to email us at the communityrelations@bchousing.org. And stay up to date, of course, with the project webpage that's listed there on the side. Okay.